Welcome to the Anxious to Secure podcast. I'm Yula, your anxious attachment style coach. I'll help you to finally stop overthinking your relationship by overcoming your fear of being left by your partner. Thought by thought, action by action, now episode by episode. Why? So you can experience true, authentic, anxiety-free love and feel a lasting ripple effect in all areas of your life. Are you ready to become the best secure version of yourself? Let's go. The Secret to True Anxiety-Free Love, Your Anxious Attachment Guide. Welcome back to episode 13 of the Anxious to Secure podcast. I'm Yula, your Anxious to Secure coach, and I'm so excited you're here, whether it's the first time or you're back for more. Today's episode is all about anxious attachment theory, the secret to anxiety-free love and creating really healthy, fulfilling relationships. We're going back to the basics, diving into attachment theory to help you understand the foundation of emotional safety in relationships. Super, super exciting and so important if you really want to make your relationship work. I'm going to break down what attachment theory actually is, what it means for you and how you can understand your own attachment style, even your partner's perhaps, because it gives you so much of a bigger picture of what it means for your partner and for yourself. It helps you to understand your behaviors and your thoughts better as well. And if you ever wondered, why do I feel so insecure in relationships? What's my attachment style and why does it matter? How can I stop overthinking and start feeling safe in love? Why does my partner get so defensive when I ask for reassurance? Or even why do they seem so distant when I just want to crave closeness? Or maybe even why do they seem to need so much space while I crave closeness? This episode is for you. So a few years ago, I was constantly questioning if my partner would even love me. I would hesitate to reach out for affection because I was afraid of getting rejected. Even just holding hands or like wrapping my arms around him was something that felt very scary because I felt his hesitation. I felt he didn't feel like comfortable around that. And that made me feel super anxious and insecure because if you're if you're with your partner, especially for a couple of years, you think, why is my partner feeling uncomfortable with physical touch? Why are they feeling so weird about closeness? And now, years into having gone through this journey and having done this inner work, I'm understanding so much more why that is. And I see this in my clients over and over and over again, the same pattern. And it helps me to feel also so much more secure within. When you realize, you know what, this is not just a pattern from your own partner. This is a pattern that happens in attachment theory. You can explain it based on attachment styles. You realize why this happens, where this is rooted in, everything makes sense. And you stop taking things personal when they withdraw and when they don't prioritize you, and you can access their love so much deeper. So this is why I'm so passionate about attachment theory. That's why I'm an anxious to secure coach now, because this changed everything for me. When you don't take it personal that they are not that much into physical touch because of their own traumas, it changes everything. So yeah, when I started learning about attachment theory and began to understand my anxious attachment style, things really shifted. And I realized I was creating a lot of unnecessary fear in my own mind. Fear that my partner would pull away or that he didn't love me the way I needed him to. And once I understood my own needs and triggers and his avoidant tendencies, I stopped fearing that rejection. And I started to actually work on my own fears and insecurities. I could ask for reassurance if I needed it, but from a different place, not from a place of I need this, more from a place of, hey, you know what? It would be great if you could give it to me, but I'm also detached and I'm okay if I can't receive it from you right now. And this is a much more empowered place to be. So imagine being able to hug your partner without feeling the anxiety and knowing that they just want you just as much as you want them. And imagine not needing to second guess every word they're saying and replaying every conversation back and forth and overthinking every gesture or every move they do or the silence that could be in the relationship. And that's really the power of understanding attachment theory. It's not about fixing yourself. It's about creating emotional safety and understanding that dynamics that are playing out between you and your partner and different attachment styles and why we're attracting the opposite attachment style and the opposite basically. And if you're ready to feel safe and loved and secure in your relationship without the constant fear of rejection, I can really help. It's all about really understanding your attachment style, but also your partner's and learning how to create that emotional safety from within. And that's so powerful. So let's get started. First, to really make sure you know your attachment style, because there's so much confusion around. So many people think they are this style, but they're actually that style. I highly recommend to take my 3-minute quiz where you can figure out if you're anxiously attached or disorganized attached or what your main attachment style is. Again, it's not like a quiz that gives you 100% certainty, but it gives you so much more certainty than just guessing around or listening to a podcast. If you head over to my Instagram at the Anxious and Secure Coach, you can reply quiz under any of my posts and you get the link sent to you. I'll also usually link it under any of the podcast's bios. So let's break down the 4 attachment styles and we'll talk about the strange experiment that breaks down where it all started, and I think it's super interesting to hear about it. So are you ready? So what is actually attachment theory? Let's break it down very quickly, just the basics. So attachment theory was originally developed by John Bowlby in the 1950s, I believe. He observed how their relationships with like caregivers, for example, moms and dads or other people who raised them, could shape how they then would connect later on in life with other people, any other person. It could be friends and romantic relationships or colleagues. Attachment theory explains how we attach to other people later. Fast, slow, anxiously, with confident. Don't know how to say that, but you know what I mean. And the theory suggests that our early attachment experiences with caregivers influence how we attach then and interact later in relationships. And then there's this really super interesting experiment done by Mary Ainsworth, and she was a student of Bowlby. Ainsworth's strange experiment shows really how babies were observed in a room with a caregiver, and I think it was just a mom, as far as I remember. There's a video on YouTube you can watch as well if you Google Ainsworth strange experiment or strange situation. That should pop up. And it shows that babies were in a room with a caregiver, let's say their mom. The baby would be left in a room with a stranger. That's why it's called strange situation. And by the reaction of the baby, you can tell its attachment style. So let's go into 4 different babies' reactions and how we can tell their attachment style. So let's talk about the securely attached baby first, how it reacted. When the mother left the secure baby, the baby was in distress. But when she returned, the baby was easily comforted. And this indicates the trust that, the baby has with a caregiver, with a mom, the ability to comfort the baby quickly and so on. And for an anxious attached baby, the distress is much, much higher in the moment the mother leaves. So it's crying a lot more and is much more anxious when the mother leaves the baby in the room with a stranger. And then when the mother returns to the baby, it takes much more time to soothe the baby again. There's much more reassurance needed, and the baby probably felt like, the needs were not met there, and it was kind of missing something, and just felt overall much more anxious, and it took a lot more time to calm down again. And now let me introduce you to the 3rd baby, and I want you to guess which attachment style this one has. So the caregiver left the baby, and they didn't seem to care much when the caregiver left it, and it didn't seem to seek much comfort when they returned to the baby. And these babies had to learn to really suppress their emotional needs due to the previous unresponsiveness from the caregivers. And this is kind of, really breaking my heart every time when I read about the experiment, when I see it, because this really shows, this is by the way, the avoidant attachment style. This kind of really shows how people who hating on the avoidant attachment styles have no idea about the root causes, about the upbringing, about the emotional needs and the suffering the baby has been through and this trauma. Imagine when you're a baby, not even crying when the mother or dad is leaving, and there's no strong connection there because the baby thought, what, my mother or my dad is not there for me, so there's no point of me even reaching out for them or for me to cry. I have to learn to take care of myself right now, and that for me is just heartbreaking. And then there's a fourth baby. So these babies show confusion and fear when the caregivers leave the room and also when they return. So it's like this mixed behavior, and that's called disorganized attachment style. So they didn't know how to really react when the caregivers, like the mom, for example, comes back or leaves, and it's a very inconsistent or maybe even frightening behavior. It's very chaotic. And again, that's the disorganized attachment style. And now that we know, more about the development, I want to talk more about the 4 attachment styles and really go into details about the behaviors, a little bit about the core beliefs to understand more about them. The more we really understand the behaviors of each style, the more we understand each other, the more we can create healthy relationships. It's so interesting for me. Whenever I watch a reality TV show, whenever I meet people outside, I can so quickly tell their attachment style, especially if they're anxiously attached, because that's a very dominant attachment style. It's very easily to tell for me. Yeah, the behaviors. Anyways. Hey you, if you're multitasking, come closer. Are you tired of obsessing over your texts from your partner? Are you constantly checking your phone every 5 minutes? Are you overthinking every message they send? Are you feeling abandoned when they don't text you back right away or take too much time to respond? Imagine feeling like this in 21 days. Calm when they're texting or when they don't text. No more anxious spirals. Knowing their silence really doesn't mean anything about your self-worth and that you're still safe. Watching your partner become more obsessed with you because of your new energy. That's exactly why I've created my mini course on text anxiety. The only one you'll ever need to learn how to stop obsessing over text in just 21 days or less. The first round of my beta course is open, so grab your spot before the price goes up. And let's transform your relationship anxiety one text at a time. How? Either find the link in my bio or jump over to my Instagram and comment under any of the posts the word text anxiety. Let's visualize a square with 4 quadrants. And this is how we can really explain the 4 attachment styles, because it's all on a spectrum. So each corner represents a different attachment style. And we want to start with the top left corner, where there's the secure attachment style. And I like to envision like a person, and I want to call her Secure Sarah. And Secure Sarah is very low avoidant and low anxious. And she has to believe that I'm okay and you're okay. Meaning she has a very high self-esteem, but she also easily trusts other people, and she thinks really highly of others too. So her traits are, she trusts both in herself and in other people. She enjoys intimacy without feeling overwhelmed. She's able to communicate openly and handles emotions calmly. She can deal with conflict without catastrophizing or being extremely loud or over the top, or without like having to escape or withdraw or shutting down. So she's very regulated in her nervous system. And then let's move over to the top right corner, and there we have the anxious attachment. So on the top right corner we have anxious Annie, and she's very high anxious and low avoidant. And her core beliefs are, I'm not okay, but you're okay, meaning she has a very low self-esteem, but she easily puts other people on a pedestal, right? So her traits are, she worries easily about losing other people like friends and especially her romantic partner. She craves a lot of closeness because of that and often feels very needy, even though needy is something she hates, but she feels like she doesn't know how to fulfill her own needs, or she doesn't even know what her own needs are, because all her life she has been abandoning herself to survive, to be liked, to not be rejected or abandoned. And then she easily overreacts to small issues because she holds back so many times of what she actually wants to say or what she needs. And then it all stores up in herself, and then suddenly she explodes over tiny little things. And then she easily becomes clingy because she really craves so much closeness, and she has this huge need for connection because inside of her is this huge void. And that becomes very easily overwhelming because she feels so deeply and in conflict that can seem way too much. And conflict is this huge threat to a relationship, threat to this connection. And then if you move further to the bottom row, so the bottom left corner, we have the avoidant attachment style. And if you've noticed, it's at the opposite of the anxious attachment style, right? It's like on the diagonal, so basically the opposite side, meaning the anxious and the avoidant are completely on the opposite side of the spectrum. So anxious Annie and avoidant Andi are completely opposites. So avoidant Annie is high avoidance but low anxiety, and I will go in another podcast episode about why actually avoidance are also anxious, but that's another way how it shows up, and I will explain this in a different way. This is now more the bigger picture. So he has the core belief of I'm okay and you are not okay. And this means he can trust himself easily, but he doesn't trust other people, So huge value on independence, on autonomy, and he stays emotionally very distant and avoids being vulnerable at all costs. He hates emotions. He's probably been told as a young kid that emotions are wrong, to man up, and all of these things. He finds it difficult to share feelings or to open up later in relationships or to other people, and it's very hard for him. So he avoids closeness during conflicts or in general in relationships, and he disengages when he's stressed. So he needs a lot of solo time. And then if you move further in this, what's it called, quadrant, and in this square, to the bottom right corner, we have the disorganized attachment style. So high anxiety, high avoidance. So as you can see, the disorganized attachment style is the opposite of the secure attachment style. It's the furthest away from being securely attached. And if you are disorganized attached, you have the longest way to go to become securely attached. But you will also get through the biggest transformation. If you are disorganized attached, I want to call you disorganized Danni. You might think, I'm not okay, and you're not okay. You can see clearly here Danni's beliefs reflect, the path, the core beliefs of, hey, I am not okay, but you're also not okay. So low self-esteem, but also doesn't trust other people. So there is a huge desire for connection here, but also fears it at the same time, which is kind of heartbreaking, right? So maybe Danni is pushing other people away when they're getting close and is really experiencing a lot of confusion, or emotional roller coaster ride. And maybe everything is going great for a while, but then if there's a little trigger, you can easily then suddenly break it off or withdraw and get loud, and there's a lot of chaos there, and he has like all of his chaotic reactions to conflict and often feels lost in his emotions. Actually, I don't know if I think Danni is a he or she. Could be both, could be neither. I can't remember when I created this personality. Anyways, doesn't matter, right? So to fully understand how now these attachment styles develop, let's explore the roots more, because everything goes back to the childhood, to the roots, and especially to the very early years. As we have seen in this strange experiment, already babies have an attachment style usually. So attachment styles often really originate from the environment we grew up in and the way we experience our caregivers. But I want to highlight also that while it's a myth that anxious attachment or attachment styles are only developed because of our parents and how they showed up for us or how they modeled relationships and the world to us. It's usually also through other circumstances, and there's a lot of other factors that can influence our attachment style, and I will give you tons of micro examples what else can influence our attachment styles, like allergies and hospital visits and all of this stuff. But that's another episode. Today is just the bigger picture and the usual causes for our attachment styles, the root causes of our attachment patterns. Let's start with a secure attachment style, secure Sarah. Her overall attachment style is caused by consistent, loving caregiving. So let's give you an example. Sarah's parents always met her needs consistently, emotionally and physically, helping her to feel secure and loved. Amazing, right? Must be great. And then there is anxious attachment there. So Annie's upbringing. Let's talk about anxious Annie. So overall, her attachment style, her roots is shaped through inconsistent caregiving. So from neglect or smothering. So some examples could be Annie's caregivers, could be mother or father or whoever raised her, would be sometimes be there for her, sometimes available, but other times more distant, or leaving Annie unsure of whether she could rely on her for support. Could be also that the mother is very anxiously attached as well, has a lot of anxious attachment tendencies and is overly clingy. And then suddenly Annie is in kindergarten and there's a lot of more scarier triggers her. No one is overprotective there. And then this can create a fear of abandonment and an unworthiness wound because the kids are more real and they're excluding her. And this can then create shock for her nervous system. And then perhaps her mom was very overwhelmed at times and her dad was traveling a lot and was working very hard. And other times the mom was then super clingy again and around and projecting her fears onto Annie. So these are just some micro examples of how anxious Annie's upbringing could have been and created her anxious attachment style. And let's talk about avoidant attachment style. So Andy's upbringing, that's shaped mainly through emotionally unavailability or dismissive caregiving. So it could have been also controlling parents. Andi learned to be emotionally self-reliant because his parents were emotionally distant or rejecting his emotional needs. So he didn't get any hugs, for example, or warmth or closeness. His mom was warm and loving, but maybe she wasn't the type for physical affection or words of affirmation. While Andy's dad was from the military, let's say, and told his son to not show emotions, to hide emotions. The emotions are a sign of weakness, to man up, and all of these things. So now let's talk about Danni, disorganized Danni, his or her upbringing. So that's really overall the characteristics are here, really chaotic upbringing, neglect, and possible abuse as well. So examples could be Danny's caregivers were unpredictable, sometimes loving, and usually overall more frightening, chaotic, neglectful, leading Danny to feel really confused about love and trust. He grew up with parents shouting at each other, with an alcoholic mom, and a dad who left when he was 3 years old. So his siblings were shouting and arguing a lot as well. And his mother was too much consumed with her own problems to take really care of Danni. So this is very typical as well. And I want to share a thought I had just the other night. Hey you, if you're multitasking, come closer. Are you tired of obsessing over your texts from your partner? Are you constantly checking your phone every 5 minutes? Are you overthinking every message they send? Are you feeling abandoned when they don't text you back right away or take too much time to respond? Imagine feeling like this in 21 days. Calm when they're texting or when they don't text. No more anxious spirals. Knowing their silence really doesn't mean anything about your self-worth and that you're still safe. Watching your partner become more obsessed with you because of your new energy. That's exactly why I've created my mini course on text anxiety. The only one you'll ever need to learn how to stop obsessing over text in just 21 days or less. And let's transform your relationship anxiety one text at a time. How? Either find the link in my bio or jump over to my Instagram and comment under any of the posts the word text anxiety. I literally fell asleep reflecting on how much easier life could be if every parent could simply, sounds so simple but isn't, could simply give their child what they really need to feel loved. Things like hugs, words of affirmation, and quality time. Just having that consistent presence and care there. The kind that makes, you feel secure, cherished, and seen. If every kid had this, oh my God, I honestly believe that if that were the case, honestly believe if that were the case, so many people's lives would look so different now. Our relationships were so different, especially when it comes to how we show up in relationships, in our work situations, in life in general, how we feel every day. But here's the thing. Even if our parents didn't speak our love language or were overwhelmed and busy or didn't had all the tools we have, available now, it doesn't mean they didn't love us. Usually, I would say 99% of the cases, your parents deeply, deeply loved you. And I realized that we need to just forgive the past. Our parents really did the best they could with the tools they had at that time available. Nowadays, there's so many more tools out there, resources. You can just Google something and you have everything there in front of you. Years ago, everything was so different. It's so easy to forget that. And we really can't change what happened, but we can now. It wasn't our responsibility when we were little, but it's our responsibility now, what we can do with it now. So what's the most empowering part here? We can give ourselves the love and care that we were missing perhaps in our childhood. We can give ourselves those things, the warmth and affirmation, and we can grow from it. And I feel like this is super empowering. Like we can literally heal those parts from within now and to really realize, what our parents did the best they could. They really love us. And now it's time to give ourselves the love we are missing right now. And we can do that. And then there's this quote by John C. Maxwell. It says, "Children do not care what you know until they know that you care." So this quote really means that kids don't really pay attention to what you say or teach them until they feel loved and cared for by you. I see so many people becoming a dad or mother and they're worried, like, am I going to be a good enough dad? Or they worry about tiniest things. But in the end of the day, kids just need warmth and consistency. They don't need a fancy house or toys. They just need warmth and consistency. And I believe also parenting is one of the hardest jobs you can do in the world. And I'm not a parent yet. And I hope I will have the honor to do this one day. And I hope it's not going to be too late because I'm already in my mid-30s. So my clock is really ticking here, but I have all the respect for all the parents out there, and that's why I think it's so important that you forgive your parents as well if you're kind of in the grieving process or if there's something you're holding on to. And it shows that emotional, connection is the most important thing for building a strong bond. When kids feel safe and loved, it helps shape how they will really connect with others as they grow up, especially in relationships. So how we feel cared for in our childhood affects how we show up in all of our relationships later on. That's, what attachment theory is all about. Yeah, and I think in the next episode, I want to actually go into the 4 attachment styles and show you how each attachment style reacts different to triggers and talk you through an example, because the more we understand it, the more we can understand why our partner reacts in a way he reacts. But for this one, I think there was a nice ending. And yeah, thank you so much for joining me on my journey, and message me on Instagram at the Anxious to Secure Coach if you want me to answer any questions in a future episode. And have a wonderful January, or whenever you're listening to this podcast, have a wonderful month. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for being with me here today. Remember, change in your relationship starts with you. Thought by thought, action by action, and now episode by episode. If you love this episode and want to give me a virtual high five, please give me a 5-star rating wherever you're listening from. It really helps me to boost this podcast a little bit higher in the ranking, so I can help even more people just like you. And even share it with one more person you think would really benefit from this episode. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you. Bye-bye.